Hey everyone, welcome back to channel today. We're diving into the world of coins, specifically looking at the 1965 USA quarter dollar coin. We'll explore its history, the unique circumstances surrounding its creation, and most importantly, its circulated value today. So, if you're a coin collector, history buff, or just curious about your spare change, this 1965 quarter is an interesting piece of American coinage. It was minted in the midst of a major shift in U.S. currency. Before 1965, U.S. quarters were made of 90% silver, but due to a silver shortage, the U.S. Mint changed the composition, making the coin primarily out of copper nickel instead. So, why was 1965 such a big year for quarters? It was all due to the Coinage Act of 1965, which removed silver from dimes and quarters entirely. This act was a response to a rising demand for silver, and it marked the start of the clad era for U.S. coinage. The copper-nickel mix replaced silver as the standard composition for quarters moving forward. Now, let's talk about the design and how you can identify a 1965 quarter. The obverse, or front side, features the profile of George Washington. This iconic design was created by John Flanagan and has been in use on quarters since 1932. On the reverse, you'll see the American eagle, a symbol of strength and freedom. Look closely. 1965 quarters don't have a mint mark. This is because during the transition to clad coins, the U.S. Mint removed mint marks from quarters, dimes, and half dollars to discourage people from hoarding coins from specific mints, hoping they'd be valuable later. So, whether minted in Philadelphia or Denver, they're all marked the same. All right, let's get to the question everyone's wondering about. What's the circulated value of a 1965 quarter? Well, since these quarters contain no silver, their value isn't based on precious metal content. Their face value remains 25 cents, and even circulated ones won't generally fetch more than a quarter in most cases. In fact, since millions of these were minted, they're widely available. But don't worry, there are some exceptions where 1965 quarters can be worth more. Collectors do look for errors or unusual characteristics that could raise the value of a 1965 quarter. Here are a few things that might make your 1965 quarter worth more than face value. Occasionally, coins from this era were struck multiple times or had off-center strikes, where the image is misaligned. Such errors can increase value sometimes to $10 or more depending on severity and rarity. In rare cases, up 1965 quarters may lack the outer clad layer on one or both sides, revealing the copper core beneath. This is quite valuable, with some examples fetching $20, $100 depending on condition. Collectors look for special variants, like double die eras, where the design appears doubled due to a misalignment during the striking process. However, these valuable versions are quite rare, so if you find one, definitely consult with a coin grading professional. So, to recap, most circulated 1965 quarters are worth their face value, but if you're lucky, a unique error or rare variety could add a bit of extra value. And if you're thinking of keeping some of these in your collection, remember to store them properly. Even if they're circulated coins, keeping them in good condition will preserve their historical charm. Before 1965, U.S. quarters were made primarily of silver, 90% silver in fact. This tradition dated back to the early days of American coinage. For many years, silver and gold gave coins their intrinsic value, which helped stabilize the currency. But by the early 1960s, a few big changes. Significant coin shortage in circulation, businesses and banks across the U.S. started running out of change, which created a practical crisis. Something had to be done. This shortage wasn't just about people collecting coins, it was affecting everyday transactions, from buying a coffee to paying a toll. In response, Congress passed the Coinage Act of 1965, a landmark decision that reshaped American coinage. This law removed silver from quarters and dimes entirely, and reduced the silver content of half dollars. Instead, quarters and dimes were made from a copper-nickel alloy, creating what we now call clad coins. The Coinage Act was signed into law by President Lyndon B. Johnson on July 23, 1965. He famously remarked that these new coins would not create a new kind of scarcity, that the goal was to stabilize the currency and make sure there were enough coins for everyday use. So, what does that mean for the 1965 quarter specifically? The new quarters were created with a clad composition, which means they have an inner core of pure copper surrounded by layers of a copper-nickel alloy. You can actually see this layering on the edge of the coin. It's that distinctive reddish-brown stripe. Its composition was much more metals. This change wasn't just about cost. It was about ensuring that there would be enough coins for everyone. And produce they did. The U.S. Mint cranked out over $1.8 billion in 2016, and we should get the extension of the new 1965 quarters, making it one of the most widely circulated coins of its time. With this massive production, the U.S. was able to meet the demand for quarters, easing the shortage and making life easier for everyday Americans. Interestingly, because of the high demand and production, no 1964 dated quarters were minted in 1965. Instead, the mint focused entirely on producing the new 1965 design without a mint mark, which is why all quarters from that year look the same, regardless of the mint that produced them. The 1965 quarter marked the beginning of a new era in American currency. This was more than just a change in metal, it was a cultural shift. By moving away from silver, the U.S. set a precedent that prioritized practicality and availability over the intrinsic value of the coin itself. Since then, quarters and other coins have been made with non-precious metals, with the value of the coin tied only to its face value. And though these quarters aren't made of silver, they're a fascinating reminder of how the U.S. adapted to economic pressures and 1977 U.S. quarter dollar, or quarter. Whether you're a coin collector, a history enthusiast, or just wondering if that old coin in your pocket has any hidden value, we've got you covered. The quarter dollar or 25-cent coin is a staple of American currency, but it hasn't always looked like it does today. The first quarters were minted way back in 1796, and over the years, the design and composition of the quarter have changed to reflect the country's growth and history. The 1977 quarter features the familiar face of George Washington, the first president of the United States. This iconic design, created by John Flanagan, has been in use on quarters since 1932 to commemorate Washington's 200th birthday. On the obverse side, you'll see Liberty at the top, In God We Trust to the left, and the year 1977 at the bottom. The reverse side displays the majestic American eagle with its wings spread, perched on a bundle of arrows, symbolizing strength and readiness. Let's talk about what the 1977 quarter is made of. It's composed of a copper-nickel clad, meaning it's made of an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel, bonded to a pure copper core. This composition has been standard since 1965, after the U.S. moved away from silver quarters due to the rising cost of silver. Now, to the big question. How much is a 1977 quarter worth today? Because of the high mintage and commonality, a typical 1977 quarter found in circulation generally has a face value of 25 cents. However, there are a few things to look out for if you're interested in numismatic or collectible value. In circulated condition, most 1977 quarters won't fetch more than their face value unless they have unique characteristics, like a noticeable error or are in exceptionally good condition. If you have a 1977 quarter in mint state condition, meaning it shows little to no wear, it might be worth slightly more, typically around $1 to $5 for higher grades. While 1977 quarters aren't known for many significant errors, It's always worth keeping an eye out for any mint mistakes, like off-center strikes, double dies, or die cracks. These errors can add value depending on their rarity and demand among collectors. Some error coins can be worth $20 to $50 or more, depending on the nature and severity of the error. So there you have it. The 1977 U.S. quarter is a fun piece of American history, and while most of them are, there are always unique factors to watch for. Whether you're a collector or just love the story behind everyday items, there is a lot to appreciate about these coins. Here's a detailed history section you could add to your video script about the 1977 U.S. quarter. This will provide viewers with a better understanding of the quarter's origins, its design significance, and how it fits into the broader history of U.S. coinage. The U.S. quarter dollar has a long history dating back to 1796, when the first quarter was minted by the newly established U.S. Mint. Originally, quarters were made from 90% silver and 10% copper and bore a different design, evolving over the centuries to reflect America's growth and values. From 1932 onward, the quarter has featured an image of George Washington on the obverse side, designed by sculptor John Flanagan. The reason for this change was to commemorate the 200th anniversary of Washington's birth. Flanagan's design was based on a bust of Washington created by artist Jean-Antoine Houdon in 1785, capturing Washington's dignified and stoic profile. This image has since become one of the most recognized designs in U.S. currency. In 1965, a significant change came to U.S. quarters. Silver. Congress passed the Coinage Act of 1965, which removed silver from the quarter, replacing it with a copper-nickel-clad composition. This was intended to ensure that coins could be produced cost-effectively and remain affordable to make. The composition introduced then is the same one used for the 1977 quarter, with a core of pure copper and an outer layer of copper-nickel. The 1977 quarter itself was minted during a period of high demand for coinage in the United States. The 1970s saw a time of economic change, and the mint needed to produce millions of quarters to keep up with circulation needs. Both the Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint produced over 700 million quarters combined that year. By 1977, quarters were deeply embedded in American daily life, used in everything from vending machines to public telephones. The year also marked a unique time in U.S. history. The country was emerging from the energy crisis of the 1970s, inflation was high, and cultural shifts were happening in music, fashion, and technology. While the coin itself may seem ordinary, it's a reminder of the everyday life and challenges Americans faced in that era. So when you look at a 1977 currency, 1983 U.S., quarter dollar, one of the more interesting coins from recent history. If you're a collector, you may know this coin is a bit unique, but why? First, let's talk about the coin's history and design. The 1983 quarter, like other quarters since 1932, features the iconic profile of John Flanagan on the obverse side. This design was originally created by sculptor John Flanagan. The reverse side, as expected, has the eagle, symbolizing strength and freedom. But what makes this year's coin special? Well, the 1983 quarter has become known to collectors for one surprising reason. It wasn't widely saved by the public. Since mint sets weren't released in 1982 or 1983, very few quarters from these years were preserved in uncirculated condition. As a result, circulated versions of the 1983 quarter are actually in higher demand. The 1983 quarters were minted in both Philadelphia, with a P mint mark, and Denver, with a D mint mark. Like most modern quarters, it's made of a copper-nickel composition with a 91.67% copper core and an 8.33% nickel layer on top. Philadelphia minted approximately 673 million quarters in 1983, while Denver produced around 673 million, so there's no shortage of these coins in circulation.
One in pristine condition is a different story. Now, let's get into the real value of the 1983 quarter in circulated condition. The value of a circulated 1983 quarter is generally around its face value, 25 cents, especially if it's heavily worn. However, for higher grade circulated coins like those graded as extremely fine or about uncirculated, the value can increase to $1 to $3. For collective, these slightly better preserved coins are still valuable, as finding high-quality 1983 quarters is tough. Some collectors may even pay up to $10 for well-preserved examples, especially with full, clear details and minimal scratches. So why is the 1983 quarter so sought after by collectors? As we mentioned, there were no official mint sets released in 1983. This means that unlike most other years, some few examples of uncirculated 1983 quarters were saved. The few uncirculated coins that are out there typically came from rolls that some individuals set aside from circulation, or out of circulation. Lack of uncirculated coins in collections means that even a circulated coin from 1983 in decent condition can attract more attention. For this reason, coins in mint state MS conditions can fetch anywhere from $20 to over $100 at auctions. Coins with little wear are...
Mint-marked quarters can be valuable if they're in excellent condition. Some 1983 quarters may have errors like off-center strikes, double dies, or die cracks, which can increase their value. Keep an eye out for these rare variations. If you do find a high-grade 1983 quarter, consider preserving it. To keep its value, avoid touching it with your bare fingers. Use gloves if possible. Store the coin in a protective holder, or a coin flip, to prevent further wear or scratches. If you're unsure about the grade of your 1983 quarter, it might be worth having it professionally graded. Grading services like PCGS or NGC can authenticate and assess the quality of your coin, which can help if you plan to sell it. So, there you have it. The 1983 US coin might seem like an ordinary coin, but due to its scarcity and high grades, it holds a unique place in American coin collecting. 1984 USA quarter, that's right, this little coin is more than just pocket change. It's part of a fascinating story, and we're going to uncover its circulated value, history, and appeal among collectors. So let's jump in. So let's talk about the 1984 quarter, or as it's officially known, the Washington quarter. This coin was issued in 1984 and features the familiar profile of George Washington on the obverse side, while the reverse side shows the iconic American eagle with outspread wings holding arrows and an olive branch. This design was first introduced in 1932 to honor the 200th birthday of George Washington and continued all the way through the late 1990s. The 1984 Washington quarter weighs 5.67 grams and has a diameter of 24.3 inch. It's composed of a copper-nickel blend with a copper core and a nickel outer layer. The original silver quarters were phased out in 1965, and by 1984, all circulating quarters were made with this durable metal composition, designed to last through lots of handling and circulation. Our 1984 was an interesting year in American history. It was a time of change and growth, with events like Ronald Reagan's presidency, the Cold War nearing its end, and a cultural shift that made it a unique period for... That's part of what gives this coin its charm. It's a snapshot of an era that was impactful on both a national and a global level. In 1984, millions of quarters were minted, making this a relatively common coin in the Washington Quarter series. Most of these were produced at the Philadelphia and Denver mints, so you'll often see a P or D mint mark on the obverse side, just below the motto, "In God We Trust." Quarters with the S mint mark, indicating San Francisco, are typically proof coins and are more valuable in the collector market. Now, let's talk about what most people want to know. What's a 1984 quarter worth today? If it's been in circulation, meaning it's got some wear and tear from being used over the years, it's generally worth its face value, or 25 cents. However, quarters that are in excellent or uncirculated condition can fetch a bit more, especially if they have specific features or mint errors that make them rare. Here's where it gets interesting. While the standard circulated 1984 quarter won't usually be worth more than face value, high-grade uncirculated coins can sell for around $5 to $10. And if you're lucky enough to find a proof coin, a coin from the San Francisco Mint, those can be worth $10 or more. Let's talk about errors. Coin collectors love error coins because they're unusual and often rare. Some examples of errors on the 1984 quarter include double D obverse or reverse errors, where the image or lettering looks like it's been stamped twice, and off-center strikes, where the image is misaligned. Depending on the error and its rarity, error coins can be worth anywhere from a few dollars to even hundreds of dollars. You might wonder why anyone would bother collecting quarters from the 1980s when they're still so common. Well, for some people, it's about completing a full set of Washington quarters. For others, it's about nostalgia and owning a piece of history. Coins like the 1984 quarter represent a time and place, a part of American life that's accessible to almost everyone. If you're a collector or just want to keep your 1984 quarters in great shape, storing them properly is key. Avoid touching the face of the coin and handle them by the edges whenever possible. Storing them in acid-free holders or albums is the best way to prevent tarnishing and keep them in top condition. So there you have it. The 1984 quarter might not seem like much, but it's packed with history, value, and collector potential. Whether you're looking to start a collection or just curious about the change in your pocket, keep an eye out for these little gems. You never know what you might find. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you want more videos like this. Share this video with a friend who might have a lucky quarter sitting around. And let us know in the comments if you found any rare coins in your change. See you next time.